Okay, so what we have here is 50 meters of external CAT6 cable. We've got 200 meters of internal CAT6 cable. I thought the orange, not only did it only come in orange, but I thought the orange would be quite helpful because then you'd be able to see it under the floor. 3 double face plates, CAT6 face plates, a USB extension cable. This isn't specific to the network. This will just take the Zigbee USB stick that I've got plugged into my Raspberry Pi, which does home assistant in my house. And as that will be in the rack, I don't want the rack to cause interference with that, so I can use an extension lead to bring that USB stick outside of the rack and put it somewhere a little bit more sensible. Got a power distribution unit, so this is a 6-way plug socket with surge protection. Got 2 shelves. These are 10-inch depth shelves, and they're very sturdy. We've got a Unify Dream Machine Pro, and we've got a 12U rack. And I'll put descriptions and details of where I bought all of this from in the description of this video. The only thing that hasn't arrived today, which I've run out of time to make this video and couldn't wait for it to arrive, is a patch panel for the rack. So this should be everything that I need. And as I start to build the rack, I'll show you what's going in it, where all of this kind of comes together. Oh, just a little tip. My external network cable, which I bought last year when I was going to wire up my garage with better electricity and network for having a smart car charger. When I bought this, I didn't realise, but this is, I don't know if you can see it there, it says CCA, which is copper coated aluminium, I believe. So it's not pure copper. Now that's fine because I'm only running this to the garage, and that'll be used for kind of random Raspberry Pi projects or anything else I kind of fancy doing in there, but having a network point in there would be useful. But the internal stuff, I wanted to make sure I got it right, so I made sure that I did get proper non-copper coated aluminium, and this is pure copper. It even says there pure copper conductor cable, proper CAT6 stuff. Yeah, for doing that. So I want to make sure that everything I kind of had, everything I bought was as good quality as possible to make sure I don't want to have to do this again, really. If anything, I just want to be able to add to it in the future. So once I do this, I want to do it right. Some of this will also involve a little bit of, I need to put a plug socket inside that cupboard for powering the network rack. Fortunately, I already had all the stuff for that. And there's a back box as well, because I'm going to chase it out. And this is a little back box for the 2-port network socket that's going to go by the front door. And then in here, I've got a whole mess of wires. There's loads and loads of small cables, things I bought in the past that are all absolutely suitable, all CAT5 and all CAT6 where needed, including some very, very short ones, which will be really great for kind of patching things in, connecting things up in the rack. So yeah, look forward to trying out all of that. So here's my current network setup. It's not pretty at all, as you can see. So when we moved into the house, we had the whole house rewired. It was in desperate need of all being rewired. And at the same time, I asked them to put in kind of a basic networking sort of setup. So what you can see is the 4 lines, they come down from up here, from the various points in the house, and they terminate in this block here, and then this goes into like the switch and anything else that needs to happen. This is all mounted rather just horribly on a piece of chipboard which I salvaged from the understairs cupboard that used to be here. So moving from sort of right to left, this is the fibre line that comes into my house. I'm fortunate enough to live in an area which is fibre, and I can get full fibre here. So it's just a fibre optic cable that comes in through the wall, and I got them to put it up there out of the way next to all of this. That then goes into a BT modem, which is powered, just there's the plug for it, and then that goes via Ethernet to my Ubiquiti USG. And then that takes it, which is essentially just a router, sort of firewall sort of set up. And then that takes the cable from, there's a cable that runs from there to my switch. And then everything else is plugged into there. There is a Raspberry Pi in there as well with the little tiny Zigbee stick. I don't know if you can see that just in there. And that does all my kind of home assistant, home automation stuff. So those few things up there work really, really well. Now, the switch then runs off into one of these. This one port goes to the office. The other port is for Wi-Fi. The other port is for Wi-Fi, and then this one here is goes to my TV, which is over there. Behind there, there is a single network port, and that's just got my Apple TV plugged into it. If you look up here, you'll see there is my Wi-Fi access point. This is, again, it's a Unify access point, which works really well, and it's really, really neat because it's powered over the Ethernet cable. It means you can set up there looking really neat, and the cable is terminated. It's got a proper little network RJ45 connector on the end, and then that just plugs straight into the top of this unit. So it's really neat, really flush. And I'll go upstairs now and show you where the other access point is. And this is the cupboard in my daughter's room, and on the ceiling, well out of the way, is another network access point, Wi-Fi access point. This is the in-wall one that I actually had in my office in the old house. It's not great, it's not positioned perfectly, and what I'm going to do is move this to the garage and eventually replace this with, we'll probably take the one from downstairs and put it up here and then replace the one downstairs with a better one. But for now, it does provide some Wi-Fi upstairs. And the reason I have two access points, by the way, is because all the walls are absolutely solid, as opposed to the kind of modern build that I had before, where it was essentially layers of plasterboard separated by space. This is all solid walls, upstairs, downstairs, and it just means that the Wi-Fi didn't kind of penetrate the house as well. So I felt the need to put two in, and so far, so good. And here's the other end of that cable in the office. You can see it comes out the wall, and that's plugged into a switch which connects to my wife's computer, my computer, and the Mac Mini as well behind me. So one of the good things about moving everything into a server rack is that I can finally put this headless Mac Mini and my Drobo, which does some more home automation and kind of other media stuff, into the network rack. So I can finally get it out of the way and put it in a place where it essentially just has to be where it is. This is also a bit of carpet underlay, which works really well at deadening the sound of a Drobo that likes to vibrate all the time. So in trying to find a place for the network rack, I've explored 4 different options and settled on one. And I'm going to go through those so you kind of understand my thought process, and I think it's helpful to try and think of a number of places for these things to go. Obviously, I'm not the only one that lives in this house, so it needs to be child safe, can't be within reach of children. It needs to look fine, it needs to be out of the way. It's a big unit, it's a big rack, 12-unit rack, so it needs to be out the way and looking neat and tidy somewhere. And you know, my wife has to look at it as well if it's around, and that's usually what I think they call the wife test. I hate those sorts of terms, but it is important that everybody is happy with it. It may or may not affect them overall in, you know, kind of the quality of, you know, how good their Wi-Fi reception is, how well the internet works. But if it's something that you're considering doing at home, it's important to get it right, get the replacement right. So I came up with 4, and these are the places where I thought of. So the first one was above the door. If I was to get a small rack, a short one, maybe like a 6U rack, and I could get 1 or maybe 2 of them, I may have been able to fit them above the door here. So they come out quite far, but they'd ultimately just be up there out of the way, and you wouldn't really notice them. And it would probably look a lot better than this. But because they would come out so far into the room, I didn't think they would look particularly nice. I could get white ones. The one I bought was black, only because white ones seem to be harder to find. And I thought, well, I can just... This was an option, so I thought I could replace this and this would be an option. We were going to actually have all of this, put a cupboard across all of this, but what with the kind of buying of the rack and moving it, it means we don't have to do any of that. So anyway, that makes it a bit neater in here. Most of this will go. The only thing that will remain up here instead will be the modem. So the cable will come in, there'll be a modem here. It will plug in to a single or double port that will be up here look nice and neat. So there'll just be the modem, the ports, the network ports, and then the plug sockets to power it, and that'll be it up there. So that'll look really nice and neat up there by not having a rack there. There's a section here. This is the downstairs WC, and there's a section here that's next to my consumer unit, which is in this cupboard. And I know the door's on backwards. It's because they put the consumer unit too close to the wall, so it meant that they couldn't open it this way. Anyway, but there's this space here, and I measured it up, and it's just not big enough for a rack. You might be able to put like a 10-inch wide rack there, but trying to get that sort of equipment I found was more complicated. Maybe that was just me, but I thought that could look quite neat there. It's out of the way, but then we get visitors round. You know, people use this downstairs loo. It's here for convenience, and it's not something I really want in the corner there. So yeah, we decided against that. The next place was my garage. So there was no electrics in here at all, and when we had the house rewired, we had them put electrics in. And you can see there's a light switch here, there's another one on the other side, somewhere over there. We've got the boiler in here, which was in the kitchen. We had it moved into the garage. Got our fridge in here, we've got lights in here. So it has power, and it wouldn't be too difficult to get the network sockets here. I've got a lot of random stuff here, kind of getting sorted out at the moment. But my other thought was, where I put this shelf up, it could essentially go here. Now the nice thing about having it in a garage is it's completely out of the way. It stays nice and cool, it doesn't get too hot in the summer. It's never too cold in here to for it to become a problem for any of the equipment, and powering everything in here would be really easy. However, at some point we may want to do an extension on the side of the house, and if that's the case, then the garage will get knocked down. And you can't really see it, but the garage actually comes out further than the house, so we would probably level the garage off with the back of the house, level it off with the front of the house, and kind of build above it. And if we were to do that, I'd have to start from scratch again, and I kind of only want to do this once. So for now, we decided, yeah, probably not in the garage. And last but not least, the last place I thought of to put it was in the loft. Now, if I zoom in a bit, as you can see, I'm in the process of boarding out the loft at the moment. So if you can see, there's some bits over there. I took both the chimneys out when we moved in last year, and it gives us quite a lot of room to play with, kind of within this section of the loft. And I thought, okay, well, this it's all quite flat across there. I could mount it in there, and maybe I can vent it up through the roof, or vent it out into the cavity of the wall, or maybe just vent it out into the loft space if I needed to, you know, with some fans. But the problem is it gets too hot up here. I mean, today is March, towards the end of March, and it's 19 degrees today. And up here is pretty warm. I'm not sure exactly what the temperature is. I'll have a look in a minute, but it's just too warm for the equipment. And on a hot day, especially during a heat wave, and we seem to get one of those once, twice a year these days, it would just be too hot, and I'd be worried about the components, particularly things like the spinning hard disks inside the Drobo. If the Mac Mini and the Drobo is going to go in the rack unit, which it is. So yeah, decided against the loft. I do see occasionally people do that, but I think it's really because they have nowhere else to put it. So yeah, so that leaves me on, those are the kind of the 4 places I considered, and that leads me on to the 5th place, which is the place where it's going to go. Okay, so this is my landing, and I'm quite fortunate in that I've got an airing cupboard here, and sort of a cupboard above the stairs, if you will, here. Now we use this for all of our kind of stuff, and this cupboard we were using for bedding and suitcases, things like that. Well, I cleared it out, and we had some people remove the little tiny radiator and the mess of pipes that were there, which I'll sort of show in a second. I took out the racks that were across here. There were only 2. There's sort of space on the wall for 3, but there were only 2 sets of racks here. And that gives us this quite large cupboard space to deal with. Now I want to use it for storage, and we need some sort of flooring in here, probably carpet it when we carpet it upstairs. So you can see it's the original, I'm not sure whether it's 60s, 70s or 80s carpet, but it is the original carpet. And it gives us a lot of space. Now I measured it up, and on this wall, or on this wall, a perfect place is high up for the rack. And the benefit of having it here is that when I want to run cables from the office, which is over there, I can run them under the floorboards, and they're just proper like pine floorboards. You can run them under the floorboards along here, and then up in like a conduit or a pipe or something, up the corner, and then probably into the top of the rack, whichever side it goes. I haven't yet decided. I need to kind of just hold the rack up and just kind of see which way I think it's going to go, depending on how much room there is for the door to swing open and so on. Now for the loft, if I want to run anything kind of up, then I can run it from the I can run it, you know, kind of across the loft underneath all of the extra boarding that I'm doing, and then down into, like, say, the top of the conduit here, and then into the top of the rack. Now on the other side of this wall is that cupboard I showed earlier with my second Wi-Fi access point, so that can just run across in the loft and then down. I can run cables out of the top of this through my loft, out the external wall, and then down into the garage, and everything should look pretty neat. And then we should be able to kind of, you know, put some racks here again and be able to have access to everything that we need to store in here. So as far as I can tell, it's the best place for everything. And because I'm able to take up the floorboards, it means being able to route cables around should be really straightforward. You can see there's one or two here that actually need to be replaced because of where the radiator was. And I don't know about you, but plumbers never seem to care too much about how they put floorboards back down again, in my experience of living here. So yeah, so this is where I've settled. It'll look nice, it'll be out the way. It will be quiet. It'll be mounted to a solid wall, because these are all solid walls. I know it's floorboards, but back in the day, this house was built in 1965. They used to build solid walls on top of floorboards, as it turns out. So they're solid walls, all solid walls. They've got perfect mounting kind of ability for the rack. So this is the area that I've settled in, and it'll make a good spot for everything to kind of go into. And it's not a cupboard that's ever going to change as far as I'm aware. Just finished taking out all the shelves from here. I was going to leave them in, but then I thought, well, I can have a step ladder there. This will be gone. I can put a step ladder there, and then I can reach the cabinet, the rack, either there or there. I haven't decided exactly where it's going to go yet, but it should be a lot easier to manage and get in there, and also have access to kind of this corner where I plan to put up all the cables. So yeah, lots of old nails, some writing on this, which I'll have a look. Looks like a child's done it at some point. And I also found some tiddlywinks just poking out from underneath the skirting board there. So yeah, so I'm going to have a little clean up, tidy up of this. The classic thing about this house, I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but you can see this section here has been painted. This is tape. Someone has taped the ceiling, painted over it. You can see it a little bit easier there, to kind of cover up where a pipe used to be. And I know a pipe used to be there because the shelves that came out of here are cut like that. So yeah, classic of this house. But also, you can now see nicely, and there's the cable running all the way down, which I'll pull out of the loft because this is completely dead, but this lovely old switch that was in here, which must have been for an immersion heater or something at some point in time. So one of the first things I need to do is to remove this radiator. Now I did remove the radiator in my bathroom, albeit just kind of disconnected it on either side, but all the pipes and everything need to come out as well, because ideally in that corner, that's where I want to put a tube, or at least cut a hole so that I can thread all my cables up from downstairs, and then in the top of the cupboard I'll have one that, you know, comes from upstairs or from the loft. So yeah, this needs to go. So I've got someone coming tomorrow to take this out. Same people that did our kind of boiler and rewire and all that sort of stuff. But as you can see, there's a bit of a rat's maze of pipes, where I think there was a this was an airing cupboard, so there would have been some kind of container, possibly not a back boiler, but there was definitely a number of things that were in this cupboard over time. So you can see there was a hole here, and there's other kind of just stuff. There's just stuff everywhere. It all needs to go. Just needs to go. Also taking the opportunity at the same time to upgrade my Raspberry Pi 3 running Home Assistant to a Raspberry Pi 4 in an Argon 1 case with an M.2 drive for long-term storage, which I'm really looking forward to do, so I can keep track of mostly things like temperature sensors and all kinds of different sensor data for sort of 1-2+ years. So I'm doing that at the same time, and that should be a nice little upgrade at the same time. Okay, I'm kind of doing this project a bit sort of higgledy-piggledy because there's parts of me that wants to build the rack because all the stuff is new and exciting, and there's parts of me that really need to get on and like work out where I need to put all the cables and run them and all that sort of thing. So I think it's probably going to be a hybrid of both. I'm going to be jumping around and doing this video kind of in real time, just sort of showcasing exactly what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So as you can see, this is bare plaster here, and there used to be a chimney breast here. It was a rather strange sort of thing. It was like a big alcove here. So you can see where one leg of it was, and then the rest was over here. You just about see it under my wardrobe there. And directly below the chimney, or on the wall of where the chimney was, is the TV downstairs. And because I'm rerunning the network, I need to check to see where that cable is and try and work out where it is and try and, if I can, push it down, push a new cable down the sort of the trunking that's embedded in the wall, because all the cabling was chased into the walls because these are solid. So I need to try and find it, and I think it's somewhere under here. So I'm going to do a bit of investigative work. You can see how old and terrible the carpet is in this house. It's all completely disintegrating. It will be sorted at some point. And I can see, might have even been the electrician has actually cut along this joist here up to there. So it shouldn't be, yeah, too difficult to get that out. That's actually loose. So let's have a little look, see if I can get one of these bits out. Oh yeah, there's quite a few boards actually that are loose here, so this should make life a little bit easier. There we go. So you can see, I don't know how well you can see that, but you can see there's two cables coming down from here. No network cable there that I can see at all, and I'm pretty sure it won't be any further over than that. Well, firstly, that. And here's my electrician saying he took everything out. That is the old, don't know how well you can see that, that is the old clock point that was on the chimney in the living room. Apparently, up until the 1980s, clocks were powered, and then from the 1980s onwards, where battery technology was good enough, you used to have you could have battery powered clocks. So a lot of households, especially in the UK, had a clock point, and it was just a hole, basically a pin. And it was live when we moved in as well. So I'm not quite sure where the rest of this cabling goes to. That's what would have been in the wall. And then, yeah, there is some cable there. But anyway, the point is that there's my aerial lead, and there is my network lead. Now, I don't feel like there's a little bit of movement in there, but not really. So I'm not sure how easy this is going to be. But I'm hoping if I can make that hole a teeny bit bigger, and then maybe fill it in again later on, I might be able to get a cable down there. So here's hoping. Right, now moving across the other side of the room. I managed to move some things around and expose the board. I actually cut a bit of the carpet to get it back like this. But in pulling this up, just find, if you don't have underlay, if you can consider the backing of this underlay, I did find newspaper, January 27th, 2011. So yeah, it's been under a little while. Anyway, this is the board I can lift up. The joist runs under here, or the joists run here, and the cable runs along here as well. I was able to get some pictures using a headlight and my phone to see what was under the floor, and hopefully we can get rid of some of that old cabling as well, which is completely disconnected. Yeah, I thought I'd do a bit of narration over this bit. No one wants to hear a drill on 20 times speed. So yeah, I'm just sort of kind of taking out the floorboards here, looking for the cables, trying to find the best routes everywhere, and just trying to understand kind of what's under my floor, because I haven't really done this before. And in the process of doing all of this, I did take out quite a lot of old cabling that shouldn't have been there, that was left over from the rewire. But anyway, I'll let you get back to hearing me in the past. Right, I've somewhat hoovered out all of that now, so it looks a little bit better and I can see what's going on a bit more. So I don't know how easy it's going to see, but where the network cable runs from the living room up through here and then across here, it then goes underneath and comes out here. Now there is a brick wall, which I'm hoping I can show you. Don't know how easy you can see here, and there's a gap above it, which means that the cables can come over the top. Sorry, it's this one here. So you've got one for the office and then one for the living room TV there. And threading that through is going to be quite difficult. So what I may have to do is disconnect the office, disconnect the TV, and then like attach one end of my cable to this and then kind of pull it through from like in the bedroom, so that I've got something to actually pull it through. But yeah, it's a bit kind of tricky, so I may have to cut them off sort of near here, really, knowing that that's going to happen. So that's one thing. You can see the other cable here. This runs along here and then up into the wall like that, and then up here. And then the other cable runs here. Look, there we go. So it runs here, and then that goes to the access point that's on the ceiling in the hallway. So you can kind of see office, TV, access point in cupboard, access point in hall. So the good thing is that now I found my point, I can obviously get my cables down over here. I can also kind of thread all the cables back everywhere. Getting into the office is going to be a bit tricky. If I can't get into the office very easily right this moment, what I can do is at least run a cable and spool it up just here under the floorboards, so that when I get in there I can, you know, just kind of thread it through, and I've got loads of cable to play with. But I need to do 4. I need to remember I'm doing doubles for everything, so there'll be 2 cables when I rerun everything. There'll be 2 cables coming from here across sort of to this section. There'll be 2 coming from the TV, which is over there, coming all the way through into here. There'll be 4 coming from the office, and then that's it for this section, because the rest is going to be like the garage and the access point, and all of that can go up through the loft instead. And what I want to do is this point here is actually pretty good, because it allows me to run down the hallway, and you can see I've moved all the carpet now, and then in through here, and this board has already been lifted in the past, and that one, and then across to there, and then off into the corner. Annoyingly, there is a joist that runs across here, so it means I'm going to have to drill through it and then put them all up in the corner there instead. But that's fine. So I can drill up in the corner there. I can drill up in the corner up here to get up into the loft. And then we'll have one cable running over into the cupboard, which is here. We'll have another one running up and out that direction to go towards the garage. So yeah, so I've worked out my runs now, which is brilliant. So yeah, I think I'll lift the ones in the hallway here to be able to get access to the cupboard, and then start running some cables. Right, I thought I'd start off with an easy one, which is the ones that run to where all the network points currently terminate. So I'm hoping that I can sort of, because the first one's always going to be the hardest. Oh, yay! Right.
So what you can see I'm doing here is obviously threading it through in the corner and then out a hole. It's very difficult to capture on camera, but what I tried to do doing all of this is kind of follow, or certainly at this point, follow the route that the pipes were taking, because I thought there's less chance of someone drilling through a pipe or through the board that goes above a pipe. So I've actually drilled holes through all the joists below the pipes, and I'm threading the cables through all of those.
Ah, there's a little piece of wood there. And there.
So I've got this. This was down the wall. This is what the clock point was kind of running through. But I can use it to kind of fish cables through. So I think, let's see if this works. It might not be long enough, but I can give it a go. Sort of do that. Yes. Ah. Oh, so good. And then I can, well, slide that off. Right, now do the same thing all over again. Why don't I do two together? Why? Okay, I've now successfully done 2 runs and cut it off with tons to spare up here, because when it goes up and into the cabinet, I don't know if it's going to be at the top or the bottom or what. But yeah, I've done 2 runs and they go really neatly under the floor, under here, straight under, straight through, and then down through there. And I'll put some of the boards back now so it's a little bit less treacherous. I was having a look at the next thing to do, which was the TV over there. And I thought, why can't I just go through this side? Why do I have to follow the cables that went this way? And I don't know why specifically the electrician, when he put them in last year, went this way. But there's a gap over the little wall that's underneath here too. So I don't know if you can see it. You can see above it there. So I think I'm just going to go above this one. And then it means I can go straight out there, straight along there, straight along and down. Let's give it a go. Yes. Nice. Cool. I've had to disconnect the TV at the box above the door because I just couldn't thread anything under this length of floor. So I'm trying. What I've done is I've taped my orange cable to the other side of this, and I'm trying to pull it through. There we go. Yes. Right, I've disconnected the access point, the network jack at the TV. I gave the cable here downstairs a little pull, and I do think it's going to be tight, but let's just give it a go. There's not a lot I can do other than give this a push and hope for the best. Yeah, that's tight. Okay, I've decided it's just too difficult for the time being. So what I'm going to do is literally just put all this down in here, and I'll work on this another day. I'm running out of time today to sort of do stuff, and I've still got 4 more runs to do for the office. So if I can do my 4 office runs, get all this back down, get the 4 office runs done, get the hallway back to normal, everything will be good for today. But yeah, real shame, really difficult. I think what's happening is it's just getting stuck right at the bottom, and I can't, there's not enough space, there's no space to do anything. So I'm going to leave that there for now, put the floor back, get sorted. So here we are the next day. Yesterday I managed to get down all the boards, and I managed to do my 4 runs to the office, but I couldn't get into the office because it was still a Friday, we were still working, so I've just got them coiled up under the floor here. So I need to take up 1 board here and then whatever boards I can from in here and run them over into that corner, which is where they are. But I'm really delighted with progress. Everything's kind of back down to where it was, and you can see the massive cables there. Yeah, which is kind of crazy, but yeah, today is running the cables into the loft space, so the access point in the cupboard next to me, and to the garage, hopefully. Oh, it's under here somewhere, I bet it is. Okay, so I measured from the cupboard, it's about 220 from here going this way to the corner of the cupboard. So I just want to kind of clear up here so that when I drill through I don't accidentally drill into something. So I'm going to do that now. Right, so 220 measured from here, going across here, actually is in this section that was free, so that's good. And if you listen, yeah, that sounds like a wall to me. So I reckon it's going to come up somewhere around here-ish. Let's see if we can find out where it comes out. Well, if I turn this on, it's a lot harder than I expected. Oh, hang on, unless it's under here. Yeah, there we go. Ooh, look. This is all concrete. I wonder why it was so hard. Anyway, I wasn't far off. We're there. RJ45. There's a network cable, but it doesn't go there. So let's keep tracing it back. It's probably somewhere over here. Ah, so close, found it. So there's the sort of pattress box, dry lining box that I've got there with the cable, and you can even see the top of the back of the Wi-Fi unit. So I can run a cable to that now and not have to disconnect the other one, and I can leave a bit coiled up here until I'm ready to connect it straight into that. Brilliant. Okay, that's in and done, and all under there, and I've screwed down everything now, so I just, you know, don't move a board, especially being quite near to the edge of the hatch there. My next task is to take it, two cables from the hole here, run them along here to over there, right in the kind of the eaves, and then over the joists, not through them like I did for the last one, which I pre-drilled some holes, by the way, they weren't already there, and then go to a point where I'll drill through the wall there to get them to outside, which is above my garage, and then down to the garage. Now I'm putting them over there because, as you can see, and as I've mentioned, I'm currently boarding out the loft, and this is the area that I'm kind of working in down the middle. So but I won't be able to kind of work. I just kind of lean over from here into there to do the work I need to do, and I'll do the same over here. So this cable will run over the top of the joists and will eventually be kind of masked by these loft legs and be hidden under insulation and everything. So yeah, so I'm gonna run those cables now. I hate being in lofts. I've spent enough time in lofts in the last few years to know that I don't like it. So my aim is to go as far over there as possible. I have no idea if I'm going to come out through a brick or through mortar. The only way I'd do that is by doing it kind of up, you know, getting a ladder on top of the garage and drilling through. But if my measurements are out, I'll end up going in through into a bedroom or something, and I don't want to do that. So I figure that this is probably the the safest sort of way. And I've got my cable here I've run from the cupboard, so crawl through there, drill through, sort of see what happens. Right, apologies if you see nothing but my back. Oh, I think I got it. I have threaded it. And now, of course, what I want to do is just thread enough so it goes all the way down. I'm hoping you can see that. But what are the chances of coming out right in the mortar? It's like I planned it. Maybe I did. I didn't. I definitely didn't. Okay, so after much struggling, I couldn't get a hole through the wall. My long drill bit just, I think it's blunt, and it's not. It was cheap anyway. But I've tried one up here, and then I realised I think I was going into some sort of underlayer of roof inside the garage, and then I tried again, and then I tried next to it as well from inside the garage. And my little drill bits are brilliant, but my long one is just not working. But for now, I've just kind of coiled up the cable down here, ready to go in when I can drill a hole when I buy a new bit. But I have tacked it round the side of the building there as well. Not sure how well you can see that. Yeah, I'll take it around the front and show you there instead. There you can kind of see where I've tacked it in. There's just not one right at the top because I wasn't prepared to put a ladder on the garage roof. Not a fan of heights, but should be fine. It's tacked all the way down and it looks nice and neat. So that's one. I'm not going to do another one. I'm just going to do one. That was hard enough as it was, and I don't think I'll need to. Not for the time being anyway. Hello, and congratulations if you've made it this far through the video without being completely bored. I don't know what happened to the audio in this part. There are a few areas of the video where I just seem to lose audio, and I think this is when I recorded with my big camera as opposed to my phone. But anyway, basically you just see me pushing the box for the network rack up the stairs, and I'm just kind of sizing it up, really getting it in place, ready to start sort of holding it up against the wall and marking it up. And I'm probably doing a lot of talking about it right now, but just to confirm, this is a 12 unit rack. It's a black, it's got perforated sides, it's got two sides you can take off, and the door can come off if you need it to. You can see there's an RMWC 12 UV 450, so that's a 450 depth millimeter depth rack, so it's not the biggest thing in the world. I think it's what's considered a communications rack or a network rack, as opposed to a server rack, which is usually like 600 mil deep or greater. But for my purposes, it was absolutely fine. And here you can see me starting to unbox the rack. It's not a particularly heavy thing because it's essentially a big hollow kind of object, and the steel's thick enough that it feels quality, but not too thick that it's too heavy. It came in an enormous box, but it came with some rack hardware, so like screws and kind of the little brackets that they screw into for everything to fit inside the rack. And it also came with these 6 anchor bolts, and I didn't realize that they were like anchors, like wall anchors at the time. They weren't mentioned in the instructions, and it wasn't clear what they were at the time, but you know, after a bit of research, it turns out what they were, and I do mention that in the video in a moment. But yeah, I was really pleased with this rack. It's perforated, like I said, so that allows the air to kind of circulate through it. So being in a cupboard, I thought that was an important feature. And you can see there are two kind of sections on the top there for fans to go onto if I need it. So yeah, now I need to measure it up and fit it into the cupboard. Okay, so there are a couple of mounting options that I have. The first one is that there's plenty of room in this section here to mount it, and I could always rest it on this batten that's already on the wall. I don't know what it's attached with, but it might provide a bit of support, so that might be quite a useful thing to do. And it would sit kind of in the middle. I'd probably put it more over towards sort of this side, so that the cable run sort of came up from down here and then up the top and then down, and they'd go in the top. That's how I've been working, because then it would look nice and neat and it gets it all out of the way, and won't look horrible going into the bottom of the unit. So there is that, and the door would swing this way open. like that. The alternative is I put it on the back wall. Now, back wall will probably be slightly easier to get into, and I need to check to see what kind of space, like, you know, what's the distance across here versus from the back to the front here, see if the door opens nicely. It might be good to be able to utilize the space this side, because when you come in, there's the door kind of is right here against the wall, but on this side there's a bit of a recess, so it might be nice to kind of keep it in that corner so it's more out of the way, and then it gives you a bit of room to, I don't know, you know, even build a set of shelves next to it or something, whether that's for network equipment storage or what, I don't know. I imagine that once this is up here, this section really from these battens on the wall above is kind of that's taken up then, so you know, I can just utilize the ones below, which is fine, but it might be useful to be able to kind of utilize as much space in the top there as possible for various things. So yeah, I need to measure up the door. I think if I open the cabinet, measure it up, see which way round it works better, and then try and make a decision. I was thinking there, but I'm beginning to think there now. Either way, it won't make any difference because the cable runs are all the same. Still going to go in the top, and it's either going to go this way or this way. Okay, so it's a couple of days later, and I need to do a bit more to the rack. You can see where we last left off, I marked up sort of here and over there and up there where the rack would sit if it was central to the wall. However, that doesn't give me enough space to be able to put the plug socket. I mean, it does kind of above it, but ideally I'd like it to be sort of, you know, not right up next to the wall, you know, slightly further over. The cable will go out of the socket, show up into the loft, and I'll show you the kind of the other side of it in a minute. But it gives me slightly less room on that side, but only a couple of centimeters, I think. So plug socket, go up there, away from the network stuff, cabinet, then cable runs down the side there. Yeah, so I need to drill a hole somewhere around here, mark all this up, drill a hole in the ceiling. I know roughly where it's going to come out because we drilled this one and we're up in the loft the other day doing that. But I'll show you what I'm going to do with the cable. So I'm in my bathroom, and you can see where I took the wall out between the toilet and the bathroom, and to make it into a bigger room. And we need to obviously get a bathroom, but what you can see is there's a hole just here, and this is where when the wall was here, there was a one of those electric heaters that you pull a little cord and it just blasts out heat. I'm not sure why it was there, because it had a radiator directly below it, although the radiator wasn't very big. But the cable that was there has its own fuse or switch in the consumer unit, in the fuse box, whatever you want to call it. So, and it's switched off there, and the cable is terminated in a junction box above here. And I know because I did that. So what I can do is I've got a length of cable. I can connect in my cable into the junction box, run it across the loft, and then down into the cupboard, which is just there. So I think that's the best option. And I say that because it'll give me a dedicated switch in the consumer unit for just the rack stuff, just the network gear in this cupboard. And I figured that would be a nice way of being able to isolate it if I ever need to. And it's about as neat as it can possibly be. So it utilizes something that's currently not there, but the cables all run already. So I'm going to do that now. Oh, and before I do that, I was perplexed as to what these were that came in the rack box. And they are for concrete, drilling into concrete and mounting things. Basically, when you drill a hole, you insert this into the hole, you screw this or wind up this bolt, and then this draws this section into this sort of sleeve and expands it. And you can see the expansion area here, and it makes a really firm grip into the wall, into the concrete or whatever it is, solid walls that you're drilling into. Now, I didn't know that when I saw these. I thought they might have been legs. I don't know why they supplied 6 of them, because I only need 4 to mount this on the wall. And I'm perplexed as to why they said don't use any of the fixings in the box that comes with the rack to fix it to the wall. The only thing I can think of is that they were referring to the rack screws. where someone might think that one of these is suitable for mounting on the wall. Now I know that, but you know, someone that doesn't, maybe they're not particularly good at DIY or whatever, maybe they wouldn't know that. So I can understand about this, but these seem to be specifically for going into hard walls. So I'm a bit confused as to why they said that. But what I am going to do is I'm going to test that out. So once I've marked everything up, I am going to mark up the holes and drill them as if I'm putting these in. Put them in, and if I notice any cracks in the wall or any problems, or they seem loose and they don't want to come out, then I will stop and I will buy, you can get this stuff, it's like a resin, you put it in a, you know, like a gun that you get for like mastic, you squirt it into the hole that you've drilled, you insert the wall plug, you let it set, and the resin kind of finds all the porous bits around the hole that you've drilled in the sort of the whatever kind of concrete or block work you've got, and will kind of make that section solid, so you're fixing into something solid, and then you can attach it. So worst case scenario, if these don't work, I've got a fallback. And I also have a solution as well, this is all stuff I thought of at the weekend, for mounting the cabinet, just to give it a little bit more support as well, because I'm mounting it on the wall. I've got this bracket already which I can use, but what I do is I'll put a little bit more bracket here, and I'll put a little one here, and then I'll put a plywood shelf across here, and then the whole rack will sit on top of that as well. So it won't be supportive on its own, but it'll add support overall, especially when the cabinet's attached to the wall. And I thought that's as safe as it can possibly be up there. And I've got some 18mm plywood in my garage as well, ready to be cut down to fit that section. So I thought, yeah, that's pretty good. And I just have to notch out a little section in the corner here for my cables to come through. So anyway, let's get on with the plug socket. Right, so I've got my back box. It's very difficult to film in here. It's a very small space, so apologies if you're just seeing a bit of something. There we go. So we got the cable coming down now in through the box, which is attached to the wall. Yeah, so just time to trim it down and put the faceplate on and give it a test. And there we are, all finished. It wouldn't actually switch on, whatever I plugged into it just wouldn't come on a minute ago. But I think it tripped the RCD when I turned the switch on. And I remember that happening to the electrician again when we had the house rewired, because it's just, everything's just really sensitive. So, but I switched it on and it's all absolutely fine, and everything else is on, nothing else is tripped. So I think that was just a case of the first time it was turned on kind of thing. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that. It's quite a big back box, but it was the one I had kicking around, so it was free. So yeah, so now I'm going to measure up and kind of get an idea of where the cabinet's going to go. Okay, it's the next day and I didn't want to show myself building a shelf because it wasn't very interesting. And if you've seen some of my other home office build videos, then you would have seen me do a fair amount of woodwork. It's very basic, so I just made two little brackets here. I measured the distance from here to here, made this bracket, made one the same using some batten I had in the garage, don't know where it was from. And then I made a plywood shelf that fit. So it's sort of a custom fit because the walls aren't perfectly straight, but it is level, and I've cleaned it off, and I've also drilled the hole and also did a bit of sanding as well, just to make it a bit neater and a bit softer for the cables to go through. And that is the same size as the one down in the corner here where all of these cables came up through the floor. So yeah, it would, and you can see I've screwed it down as well a few times around the outside. So yeah, it is properly solid shelf. I wouldn't be surprised if you could sit on it, which is good because the server will sit up here. So, or the rack rather. So, so yeah, so I'm gonna now kind of put it on, test it out, and yeah, just kind of start to measure up where it's going to go on the wall. But yeah, it's good. I'm pleased with that. Looks good. Okay, that's cool. Okay, so I have now drilled the holes after a quick trip to Screwfix to get a 12mm bit because I didn't have one. And I have tapped in the wall anchors. I had a slight mishap here in that I drilled the hole, the anchor went in fine, but it didn't fit flush. So I give it a tap with the hammer and it went in. I tapped all of them in with the hammer and they were fine. Then I noticed that the thread was coming out quite far and I thought, oh, something's happened. Anyway, what had happened was I had tapped it in and this bit had stayed in the wall and it sort of had just, whenever I tapped it, it kind of pulled this forward, but into the kind of the sleeve. So it made it quite difficult to actually get this out of the wall, but I was able to do it with a hammer just by pulling it like you would pull a nail. And it did that, except for when it got to the end where it was all kind of, this bit here was a bit like wider, it pulled and it just pulled the top layer of plaster off the wall. So I can neaten that up, but most of this is going to be behind, well, in fact, I think all of it's going to be behind the cabinet anyway, so you won't really see it. So it doesn't look very, but it doesn't look very nice, but hey ho. So I put, luckily, because the cabinet came with 6 of these, I had a spare one, I've got a spare 2, and I was able to tap it home after I drilled out the hole a little bit more, but all the rest are completely flush. The sleeve, the top of the sleeve is flush with the wall, and then you've got this on the top, and this is wobbly because it hasn't been tightened up yet, and you have to remember it's going to tighten and pull it kind of in the wall. So what I'm going to do is get my socket set, get the cabinet up here, get the rack on here, and then tighten it up, and then probably stop for lunch. It's very difficult to film in this cupboard though. It's very difficult. So if it feels like I'm skipping steps, it's not because I am skipping steps, it's just because it's difficult to film me doing this with the camera. I'll just be getting in the way all the time. And I'm creating a lot of dust from drilling. I don't want the camera sort of on the shelf here. So when I have got something to film, like putting things in the rack and plugging it all in and moving the cables around, I will be doing that. So just bear with. And there we have it. It is now on the wall. I have tightened up these as much as I feel like I've needed to. Some of them are tighter than others, but you know, the whole thing, it's solid as a rock and it's about as level as I can make it, which isn't bad. It's not perfect, but it's certainly not bad. And that's mainly just because of, you know, there's discrepancies in the little shelf here, there's discrepancies in the wall. But either way, I'm pretty happy with it. And it seems to be like absolutely rock solid. I mean, you could, if the metal was thicker, you could probably hang from it, I'm sure. And there's no marks. If we go around the other side of the wall from the rack, there's no marks on the wall or anything like that. It hasn't punctured through. There's no cracks up by the ceiling, hasn't expanded or anything like that. So I think I can say that has worked, and I won't know for sure until I start putting equipment in it. But and you can see I've pulled through these 2 cables, which are the ones that come out the ceiling, through here. My audio's gone again, but as you can see, I've now pulled all the cables up, taken them off the floor, bundled them together, pushed them through the hole that I drilled through the little shelf, and now I'm pulling them up through next to the Wind Network rack, and they'll run up all the way along the side of it on the right hand side, all the way up along the top, and then in through the top, and then can be fed into the back of the patch panel, which I'll show shortly. Okay, and here's my first piece of rack mounted equipment. There's the power supply unit, and you can see, hopefully you can see, if I angle my torch, there you go. You can see we're in bay 1 here, and that's bay 2, bay 3, bay 4, and so on all the way up to 12, which is sort of near the top. And you can see I've run the cable for this out the back here, up through this hole, and I've plugged it in there, and I've switched it on. And if we can, sorry, it's difficult to see, and it's such a tight space where I'm working as well. But if we take this cover off and turn this on, you'll see we've got a power indicator light, a surge protection light, and an earth indicator light. So yeah, that looks good to me. I'm going to turn that off, pop that back on. And there goes the audio yet again. I'm just essentially fitting the rack shelf, or one of the rack shelves that I've got here, into a position where my Mac Mini and my Drobo will sit on, and that's kind of what I'm explaining. I do apologise, by the way, for the constant refocusing of my camera. I'm not very good with my camera at all. I bought it a couple of years ago when I was doing sort of like daily vlogs and stuff, and it's something I want to use more of, especially when I do videos, but I really got to learn how to use it properly. So thanks for bearing with over this video. And just a quick shot of everything in the rack there. Okay, so got my stuff for the next shelf. And the next shelf I am going to mount at the front, but I've got to work out where. It looks like the next available slot is slot number 7. So, thinking ahead, slot number 7 is for this shelf, and everything will fit on one shelf there, so that's fine, that's 1U. Then I've got the Dream Machine Pro, that's another shelf, and I've got the patch panel itself, which is another shelf, and then that leaves me with 3 shelves free, 3 units free. So that's really good. I think I've got plenty of space for upgrades and stuff for in the future. If I ever want to put a, I don't know, a little small machine in here or anything like that, which is something I've been thinking about for a while, I can do that. So I'm going to get to putting this shelf in. It's actually very, I don't know if people find this therapeutic, but building this is very therapeutic. And I don't mean all of the prep work that went into putting the power in here and, you know, putting the shelf in and worrying about the weight and drilling the holes to the wall. I mean, just building the rack, just building the stuff that's in there, getting the cables, you know, just making everything neat and tidy. It appeals to me on all the levels. So, right, that's those in. Let's get the shelf. So, yeah, I think I'm going to have to trim these. So what I'll do is I'll probably just cut them all about here, which would give me, sorry, back here. There's give me plenty of room to work with, and there's a bit of slack in there as well. And I can always push a bit of slack under the floor as well in case I need that there. So I think I'll probably do that. I think I'll probably cut these off about here so they're a little bit less unwieldy. Okay, I've had to think on my feet a little bit because I'm at a point now where I want to start disconnecting things and plugging things in, like I've done with the Drobo and the Mac Mini. But I can't because we're using it all. We're using Wi-Fi and everything. So I'm trying to work out the best way to disconnect everything and then reconnect everything. I did my last run. You can see there's one cable that runs this way. That runs into sort of essentially under the floor here and into the Wi-Fi access point below this, behind this wall, through the ceiling. And then I've routed that through, and you can see I've just poked that through one of the holes for the screws there, so I know which one that is. And then obviously we've got the other Wi-Fi access point, which runs into the ceiling above this one, and then we've got the garage as well, and all the rest ones are sort of tucked around here. It's looking a lot neater. Obviously that looks a bit of a mess, but that'll be tidied up soon enough. So starting to try and work out what's going on. So my aim is to try and start, I need to put some ends on the other ends of these, if you see what I mean. So I'm ready to just plug them into the access point when I'm ready for them. But I think what I'm going to do is take one of the leads that goes to above the front door, and I put that in the existing patch panel so I have something to plug it into, and then I can start kind of configuring things and working out where things are. I'm not sure if there's a way that I can kind of test the cables at this end to see if I can find which cable relates to where. That was just an oversight on my part. Again, as I say, I've not done this before, and you know, I think a bit more planning I probably would have labelled them up and done a better job, but I was so in such a rush to get everything done and obviously get the floor back to normal for the family to be able to kind of be able to use it that it didn't occur to me. So anyway, I think I'm gonna try and see what I can do. I might be able to get, say, the Wi-Fi working off the new system before the end of the day. So let's see. Okay, last update for the day. Pretty worn out, but I've trimmed down the cables even more, and I needed to find which one was the hallway, and I found them. And what I did was, you can see I've cut back some of the wrap there, and then I've cut back some of the sheath of like some of the colours. And what I did, actually, I'll just show you. Hang on a second. What I did was take this cable, and you can see I've wrapped the blue sections together to kind of make a loop essentially. And then I wrapped the orange ones on this cable, because there are two cables down here. And my aim is that I'm going to use two of these to patch these in, take them so that I've got points to be able to plug into here. So I can say take the internet feed from the modem here straight into here, which will be attached to one of these, which will take it straight up to the cabinet upstairs. And then I can have my Dream Machine Pro up here and my patch panel, and I can just link the patch panel from the two hallway points directly into the Dream Machine, and then I know that that's essentially got internet, and then I can work backwards from there. So I can do like the access points, get them online. So I can do a lot of stuff very quickly if I do that. But I need to find out the hallway one. So you can see I found them here, and I've stripped back the blue on one of them, and on both of them actually, and tested them. I tested all the blue ones. And I found one, so that was one of the hallway ones, and then the other one was the orange one, and I found that one. And the way I did that was I took a multimeter, which I have. I took my multimeter, I put it in continuity mode and just tested, and that way where the cable downstairs is twisted together into a loop, I was able to test to see if there was continuity on this pair, so on the blue pair and then on the orange pair. And sure enough, I was able to find the hallway. The first one took a little while to find, but the second one I found almost instantly. So yeah, what are the chances of that? But I've labelled them up now, and now I can patch them into my patch panel and put in my Dream Machine Pro. But it is a bit tight for space, so you can see I'll kind of just put the sort of the nuts ready to kind of mark up the spaces. But I'm unsure exactly on how to make this as neat as possible. But yeah, it might be that now that I know which one the hallways are, maybe it doesn't matter where the other ones are at all. So I might just put those all in and terminate them into my patch panel now or tomorrow morning. Okay, so it's another day, and last night after work I quickly went about installing all the cables and fixing them into the patch panel and moving the patch panel up into the top location, so it's all nice and out of the way. You can see that they're all kind of zip tied around and everything, and some of them are labelled, and I've also labelled some of them up here as well. So you can see it says garage, AP cupboard, AP hall, that's access point, and then hall. So and I've got my Mac Mini and Drobo in here and actually working and plugged into the network. And what I did is I sort of spliced it in downstairs so that I could kind of continue to use my Mac Mini and everything for the time being. So next job is to install the Unified Dream Machine Pro in the next slot, and power that and route the cable through to the power strip here, which I'm going to do now. And much like the previous parts of this video, I will film myself kind of installing it from outside the cupboard and then bring you inside the cupboard to show you what it looks like. But it's looking really good. It looks nice and neat up there. There we go, that is in. It never ceases to amaze me how these two screws on this side and these two screws on this side can support the weight of something that is essentially the whole depth of this cabinet, but it doesn't move at all, it's solid. So yeah, there it is up there. I've got one of these little tiny leads that came with some other Ubiquiti equipment, but it's sort of reverse ended, so I can essentially pop it in, I think. That's the WAN port, so I'll probably go into one of these for the time being. I think I'll probably end up using a slightly larger one, but the idea is that this will go into here like that, and then we'll plug directly into the hallway like that, so it's a nice small cable. But for the moment I think I just need to get this to have internet access, so I need to plug it into the hall, which is currently got internet running to the switch, and then the switch is plugged into here, and then I can run one of these into here. So I can just get internet access onto here and start getting it set up, and then I can switch it over to everything running off of this pretty easily. There is a hard drive bay here as well, which I do intend to use. I have a spare, recently upgraded the hard drives inside my Drobo, or 2 of them anyway. So I've got some spare drives. They're not like brilliant drives, but they're fairly good Seagate drives that have been running for a number of years. So I think they're still fairly reliable. So I might pop one in here, a 2 terabyte one for using for Unify Protect. But yeah, so let's get a cable and then plug it in. It's starting. That's now in and on and working well, and it asked me to change the cable over to actually plug into the WAN port. So I was able to do that, set it all up on my phone, and I've plugged the Drobo back in again, the Mac Mini Drobo combo back in again. So so yeah, I'm going to move this shelf up because I want it to be up here, because that's where my switches are going to be. So I'm going to move that and then start to remove some of the things above the front door downstairs, so that I can get essentially swap over what's there with what's here, and yeah, hopefully that'll work nicely. And then the aim is to start getting the Wi-Fi access points online and start hooking everything up. Got my wiring diagram, which I printed out in January 2008, as it turns out, but I always have that on me. It's quite useful. So I need to put an end on this, because once I've done that, it means that I can take everything else out, but I can't really do anything until I've taken the I've put an end on this and plugged it in here. So that's what I'm going to do next. But it looks like this needs a bit of a clean. I might do that first. Right, fortunately I've only got one more of those to do for the other access point, so I'll do that in a bit. Right, what I need to do is connect that to here, so let's do that first. Try and take out as much of this as possible. Connect that to here, and then move that into the cupboard upstairs. So let's do that. Let's unplug you. That all looks good, bit messy, but good. Okay, so I've got the switch with me, I've cleaned it up, and I've also got the power cable, which I have cleaned up as well, because it was very dusty. So now it's a question of plugging this all in. So we've got the access point in the hallway, which is that one there. That can go in, let's put that in PoE 8. We've got the access point in the cupboard. That can go in PoE 7. I'm sure these cables will relax a bit once they're in here for a little while. They've just been stuck in their place for a while. Hello. So it's a few days later, and I've been working a little bit on the rack, kind of in my spare time over the weekend. Basically, as you can see, I've got my Raspberry Pi, and I've got my two network switches. These are the 60-watt versions. You can see they've got 4 PoE ports on each one, and I've kind of taken some of the cables out until I can work out exactly where everything's going. This is my Tado here, and I'm powering that via the USB on the back of the Raspberry Pi. And that's just plugging into a network port as well. But I quite like how all this looked quite neat up here all on one shelf. And then we've got the Dream Machine up there, which has been absolutely brilliant. I've also added a 2 terabyte hard drive. It's just a basic kind of Seagate Barracuda one in there, but yeah, it's that's going to be used for camera at some point. And everything else has been working incredibly well. You can see I've used up all 6 slots there. On the power strip. It might be useful to get another one, and obviously I've got the space as well, so I probably just need to raise this shelf up one and then put that kind of in line with the front of the shelf, much like I've done with this one, where I've mounted the shelf at the back and then this at the front. So I'm really pleased with this. It's looking really, really good, and it's still absolutely rock solid as well. There's no gap or anything that's formed on the wall. It's absolutely solid as a rock up there. I think the shelf was a really good idea in hindsight. Yeah, and the cable obviously looking much neater as well. The Raspberry Pi, I've got a Zigbee adapter, which I've just kind of stuck down there. It's on an extension lead, USB extension lead, running off the Raspberry Pi, and I put that there because I want to get that away from the rack so that I can kind of get the best kind of signal out of it. I still need to get a repeater and put that downstairs, but for now, I think what I've done is looking really good. So next steps are to tidy up above the front door and to finally finish wiring the office. Right, so that's my TV aerial. I'm going to completely reroute that. So I'm using that as an opportunity because it follows all the same runs as the network that went to the TV. So here's the cable that I put the other day. So those are the 4 runs for the office. You can see one's already been pulled through here. And then I've also drilled through all of the joists where there was a cable there before, but it's very small, won't be enough for 4, so I've just made that a bit bigger. So let's do one of these. Well, do these one at a time. Nice, right. That's all done and in. I'll get these boards back down. And the good thing is that little section there, you can see there's 2 small boards. So it means all I have to do is work in that section so I can put the big boards down, but leave the little ones up. So that's perfect. And what you've seen there is my pathetic attempt at the end of my video. I'm not sure why I didn't record anything else. That essentially sums up everything. So you've seen the whole rack being built. You've seen everything get taken out of my existing setup and then moved to the new setup. Here's just a few photos of things that I didn't get a chance to show. Starting with the completed rack in the cupboard with the door on, and everything moved over. I think it looks nice and neat up there. Exactly what I wanted. And here's a photo of the socket behind the television. It was a really tight fit, and in fact what actually happened was there was a small piece of rubble at the end of the capping, which is this kind of piece of plastic, sort of, it's like a half tube that goes in the wall over the top of electrical wires and network wires that the electrician put there. And there was a small bit of rubble right at the bottom, so I couldn't push my cable through. But what I ended up doing, as you'll see in the next pictures, is I bought some cable rods for fishing and kind of pushing and pulling cables through, like electricians have, I guess, which I was able to push all the way down, attach cable to the end, and then pull all the way back up again. So I was able to do it in the end, and I was able to do it with, it's exactly how I did it with my office, in a very tight space. It was an absolute godsend, and you can see I've chased out my socket in the office. I just used a multi-tool for that, and then put the faceplate on, wired it all up and put the faceplate on, because appreciate I didn't show any of the faceplates in this video. So yeah, I was really pleased, and getting 4 cables down a piece of capping was actually possible, network cables anyway. And here you can see it all finished in between 2 plug sockets. It's a bit of a strange setup. I'm not sure why the electrician put the plug sockets where they are exactly, but it is what it is, and it is nice and neat. It's under a desk, you don't see it. And this room does get decorated a few months later, so all of this mess is all tidied up, looking good now. And another view of the cupboard there with the slats back in and some other things starting to go into the cupboard. So as you can see, really hasn't impacted how we use that cupboard at all. It's all in, all out the way, central to the house, easy to get to, easy to maintain, and I'm absolutely delighted with it. So if you've enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, subscribe if you're not already, and hopefully I'll talk to you again in the next one. Thanks very much.